Stricken from the Nine, Fae named him Atreus, giants called him Loki, yet the Norns carved his true name into oblivion. Odin's hand guided the blade, stricken from the Nine name older realms than the Bifrost, a name that could shatter the veil. Names are weapons. In survive. Names are weapons, names are anchors. In erasing Atreus, the 9 realms buried a truth that could shatter the veil between chaos and order. The Jotun prophecies do not name him Loki, they name him Void-born a fulcrum in a war older than Yggdrasil's roots. Santa Monica Studios did not merely rewrite Eddic verse, they razored out a heresy. By grafting Loki's legacy onto Atreus, they severed a thread in the Norns' loom. What dies when a name is stricken, not just identitydestiny. The boy's true appellation was a lock on reality's door. To speak it would be to unmake the fragile peace Odin's sacrifices could not hold. What have we forgotten by forgetting his name? What wakes when the silence breaks? Asgard, Odin's throne over the 9 realms, stood where the Norns wove fate at Urarbrunn. Their threads bound past, present, future until one frayed. A boy was born, not named by the Norns, but by a god's silent act. His true name was scorched from the Eddas, from Yggdrasil's roots, from every seer's breath. Only Atreus remained a cipher, a shadow in the storm before Ragnarok. What if his name was older than the Aesir, darker than the void between realms? What if its syllables could unweave the Norns' loom, shatter the fragile peace Odin bought with his eye, his life, his lies? Surtur's flame will consume Asgard. But what burns hotter than that? The name forgotten in the ash, the truth buried in the boy who was never given a name at all. The 9 realms tremble on their axes, a nameless boy walks among them. What wakes when the silence breaks? The Eddas whisper of a name that predates Yggdrasil's roots. Giants carve it in blood on mountain bones, a name that bends time toward Ragnarok's tide. Fae gave him Atreus, a shield, a lie. The Jotun knew him as Lakino, not Loki, a title, a smudge on the truth. Prophecies etched in frost and ash speak of a child born of twin bloodlines. Aesir order, Jotun wrought, his name was a weapon. Odin's scholars chiseled it from the world tree. What is erased does not vanish, it festers. The boy's laughter cracks like a glacier. Beneath his mortal mask, primordial forces coil. The Valispa's verses tremble, not Loki, not Atreus, a name older than the world's serpent's spine. A name that could make the Norns stitch new fates. Giants sang it at Asgard's founding. Kings buried it in pyres. Why? Because a name is a chain. And this one was never broken, it was surrendered. The boy walks unseen, unnamed, yet the stars lean to hear his footsteps. The void behind him breathes. What wakes when the silence breaks? Not a god, not a trickster, a force that chose to sleep until now. The boy's name was not written in any grimoire, not carved into Yggdrasil's roots, not whispered by the well of Erd. Santa Monica left a gap where a name should be, a hollow, a cipher. They gave Loki a face, Baldur a voice, but Atreus' true name. Buried under ash and prophecy, Odin's lies were built on omissions. He fed the boy a future that was not his, a role that was not his. The Allfather knew what a name holds. A name is a lock, a key, a chain. To speak it is to bind, to silence it is to unmake. The studio's choice was deliberate. They erased the name to save the world or to doom it. In the Eddas, names are weapons. In the game they are ghosts. Why? What truth would a name like Atreus unleash? The boy bled for a war that was not his. Fought a fate that was not his, yet his name-high's first breath of identity was stolen before he could speak it. Santa Monica's silence is a wound. A scar over something older than Asgard. What if the name erased was never Loki, never Baldur? What if it was the name that shattered the Bifrost? The name that made the Norns weep, the name that, if spoken now, would make the realms burn. They gave him a new name, a new purpose. A new lie, but the void behind him still breathes, and in that void something waits, not for redemption, not for revenge, for recognition. The cape still bleeds. Kratos carries its weight like a crown of thorns, a relic that drank the blood of Sparta and will drink more. Atreus walks beside him, a name carved from ash, a boy who was never meant to speak his own truth. Faye saw the fracture before it split the realmshire visions not of gods, but of a name swallowed by silence, a name that could unmake mountains. The rage in his bones is not his own. It is the echo of a title buried beneath Asgard's ruins, a title that made Odin's lies taste sweet. They called him Atreus to drown him in grief, to make a king's son a shadow, a weapon, a question without an answer. But the void behind him does not breathe. It remembers asterisk. It remembers the sigil etched into his spine, the same sigil that burned in the eye of the first flame. What if the cosmos itself feared what that name could unbind? Faye's hands trembled when she touched his face, not to bless, but to seal asterisk. Her foresight was a cage, her whispers a dirge for a truth too vast to hold. They erased him because he was never a god's pawn. He was the fulcrum, the lever, the name that could tip the scales of existence. Kratos' sword cuts through time, but his son's name is the sharper blade. The 9 realms shiver at its absence. Odin's tapestries are threadbare here, unraveling at the edges where Atreus' true title should burn. The rage is not in the erasure, it is in the why. Something waits in the void, not for redemption, not for revenge, for recognition. And when the name is spoken again, the stars will not survive the sound. Atreus turned from Odin's shadow. He walked away from the All-Father's lies, yet the name he refused to speak still gnaws at the roots of Yggdrasil. Odin's hunger was not for power, it was for the weight of what he could not unsee. A name that bends reality to such knowledge is a blade to the god-king's own skull. Did Atreus know his defiance was a storm? But storms can be conjured, not felt. The boy who became a wolf in Asgard's fold may have howled his own truth into silence. Or perhaps the erasure was never complete. A name buried in ash still casts a shadow. Odin's scholars whisper of a void where a title should be gap that breathes. The contradiction festers. A god who rejects his maker's design yet walks the same path of ruin. His choice an illusion carved by the very forces he defied. The 9 realms hold their breath. Atreus' lips part. What if the name is not a key but a curse? Not a revelation but a wound that reopening will not heal. The stars wait, they always wait. And in the dark between them something older than Odin's regret stirs, still unborn, still unspoken, still killing. The name they buried was not Loki, it was older, a syllable sharp enough to fracture the weave. Odin knew this, the Norns knew this. They wove his erasure into the threads of fate, a cipher to choke the primordial storm sleeping in his bones. Atreus knew the boy they named Atreus was never a boy, he was a reckoning in a child's skin. Half-Jotun blood does not dilute, it burns asterisk. A spark in Asgard's tinderbox. The Norns' prophecies do not whisper of Loki's return, they scream of a name unmade. A void where a title should stand, a scar in language itself. To speak it would be to unshackle a force that predates the Aesir's thrones. Odin's hand did not strike the blow, it was the loom. The Norns wove his true name into nothing, a negative space in the cosmos. A containment spell for what Kratos and Faye's union forged, a bridge between realms, a key to the frost's ancient, waking hunger. What if the boy's silence was not a mystery? What if it was a name erased is a war? The Norns did not fear Loki. They feared the thing he was never allowed to become, the thing still stirring in the dark between stars. What if Atreus' true name is the only thing that could shatter the 9, and the only thing that could save them? The name was buried where even shadows fear to tread. A scholar's guilt, a father's terror, Odin's hands carved the void where Atreus' true name should have lived. What becomes of a child when his essence is stolen by the man who swore to protect him? The All-Father's hunger for knowledge did not corrupt the world, it became the world's disease. A cycle of fathers building pyres to burn what they cannot unmake. Atreus walks a path etched by axes and ash. His every word, every breath, is a shadow of what he was meant to be. You think the tragedy is his wrath? No, the tragedy is the silence before his first cry. A name is a tether. Without it, he is both prisoner and key. The 9 realms tremble not from what he is, but from what was stolen. Odin's redemption hangs on a thread. A father's love, yes, but also a father's fear. Will he break the chain or forge another? The boy's true name is a storm sealed behind 3 locks. To speak it is to unweave reality. To forget it is to drown in the weight of 1,000 unspoken prayers. What if the darkness between stars is not empty? What if it is a name, a father's final secret and a son's first truth? The realms burn. The realms are saved by a word no tongue has shaped, by a boy who was never given his beginning. The ice of Fimbulwinter still gnaws the bones of Jotunheim. Kratos' blade bears its frost. Atreus' shadow lengthens across the snowy at his name. The first syllable of his power was hacked from the world tree's roots. What did Odin burn to seal this void? Not a name, a negation. A silence so ancient it predates Yggdrasil's first breath. Pandora's box was not a container. It was a question. When Atreus unsheathed his wolves in the final hour, did he unleash hope or its opposite? The Aesir built their thrones on the answer. The Norns' wove lies into the threads of time. A name erased is a god unmade. And this boy with a mouthful of storms, was never meant to speak. The wind howls through his unspoken letters. What if his true name is the shiver in the ice, the crack in the cosmos, the thing that wakes when all other gods are dead? Faye saw the name before it was ash, a whisper in the iron of his bones, not Loki, not Atreus, something the All-Father smothered. What wakes in the void between stars? What did she trade to let the 9 realms